Okay, thank you so very much. I wanted to start recording this presentation so that we will have access to it. Apologies for the delay. We'll go ahead and jump right in. This is, as I stated, our pre-submittal conference for the 2023-2024 RFP. My name is Paul Hobbs. I am the project coordinator for the NBDC program. And let's just jump right in if you can. This presentation will address several indices or categories. We'll start with just a description of what the NBDC program entails, and we will look at the prior program cycle benchmarks. We will address the 2023-2024 components of the NBDC RFP, which will consist of discussing the framework, the categories, the program requirements, the scoring criteria, the selection criteria, and the timeline, contract term, and how to apply for the program. After that, we will address or entertain a question and answer session, and we will conclude with just providing you with the program contact. So about the BACP and the Small Business Advocacy program, the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, we're charged with fundamentally two basic core objectives, which is to provide licensing, education, to regulate and empower Chicago businesses to grow and succeed. We also receive and process consumer complaints. Now, to learn more about what the department does, I encourage you to access our webpage at chicago.gov/BACP. The Small Business Advocacy Division is comprised of several teams with multiple objectives. But the primary objective of the division is to support the small business ecosystem of Chicago and promote the economic development of the small business ecosystem. The division is broken up into several teams, starting with the Neighborhood Strategy Team, which comprise the Neighborhood Business Development Center, or the NBDC program. And again, to learn more about the specifics of the program, I encourage you to access the NBDC website at chicago.gov/NBDC. The Neighborhood Strategy Team also is charged with controlling and managing and directing the Chicago Business Center, or the CBC program. In addition, the COVID-19 Vaccine Outreach and Employees or Employers Program, or the CBOE program. Now, I'm happy to say that the Small Business Advocacy Division has expanded, and we've added 2 new units to the division. Our first newly acquired or newly added unit is the Economic Recovery Team. And that team is really charged with overseeing the programs that provide grants and business support services to revitalize the commercial corridors. Also, our division has added another unit, which is the MEB and the WEB Supplier Development Team. And that team is charged with overseeing the grant programs that support the development of minority and women-owned supplier firms. About the NBDC program. Now, the grant program, or the NBDC program, provides grants to Chicago-based nonprofit businesses or business service organizations, that being 501c3 and chambers of commerce, 501c6s. to deliver free business development assistance to Chicago's small business community and or professional program development for their fellow grantees. Now, the grantees' expectations, or the expectations of the grantees, the participants of the NBDC program, also known as the NBDC grantees, will deliver highly specialized business programs and services that help entrepreneurs start and business owners sustain and grow their small businesses, as well as assist their NBDC peers to build their respective capacities. NBDCs contributes to strengthening the economic vitality of our neighborhoods and city by supporting entrepreneurs and existing businesses. Now, the prior program cycle life or benchmarks. The prior program cycle, that being the 2021-2022 cycle, statistics break out as follows. The applications received in 2021 were 155 applications. And there were 86 projects funded in 2021, totaling $3,316,910. And the range of those funding per category per annum broke out as such. For our place-based generalist program, the dollar range was between $25,000 to $64,227. The business stage specialist range fell between $25,000 to $50,000. The capital specialist range between $25,000 to $30,000, The cultural specialist between $20,000 and $37,500. The industry specialist range was between $20,000 to $25,000. The innovation specialist was a flat $25,000, and the peer-to-peer trainer fell between $25,000 to $37,500. And the map that you're looking at is the current service area map for our 2022 breakdown. And you can get further information and further detail regarding the NBDC program 2022 grantees list, as well as the 2022 grantees service area map by accessing the links provided on this slide. The 2021-2022 NBDC RFP. Now, the primary essential goals of the 2021-2022 RFP is to strengthen Chicago's small business ecosystem. Also, to address the city's racial and ethnic wealth gap. Now, the design of the program has several components, but based on research, surveys, and focus groups to ensure alignment with the ever-evolving needs of the city's diverse business community. Also, it's designed to drive collaboration and coordination between business service organizations, or BSOs, with fellow grantees, as well as non-NBDC, in order to reach small business owners, especially Black and Latin, women, immigrants, and refugee entrepreneurs. Also, business needs have evolved, and this is what we've been hearing from the small business community, as well as our partners. More than ever, we need an ecosystem that is strong and that is designed to support our existing businesses in different ways. Now, the 2023-2024 NBDC framework falls into three buckets. The generalist bucket, the specialist bucket, which consists of several specialists or special categories, which are the cultural specialist, the innovation specialist, capital specialist, the industry specialist, business stage specialist, And our third bucket is the supplier bucket, if you will, which consists of peer-to-peer trainers. And going back to the generalist bucket, that is our place-based generalist program. The NBDC categories. Now, the generalist category is a place-based generalist, which is designed to support general business needs at the hyper-local level. The specialist bucket consists of several unique and different contract types, starting with our cultural specialist. And that is designed to tailor business support to meet cultural and language needs. The innovation specialist is designed to create and support new and emergency business models. The capital specialist is to provide expertise on access to capital, recommending funding options, mentorship, and credit building coaching. The industry specialists provide industry-specific support for startup and mature businesses in 4 key fundamental and growth industries. And the business stage specialist category is designed to provide targeted strategies for at least one of the following stages: pre-startup and startup, growth and establishment, and maturity and exit conversion. The last bucket is the supporter, which the peer-to-peer trainer falls into that category. And that is designed to provide and share best practices to support and strengthen the entire NBDC grantee ecosystem. Now, the generalist category, in more detail, is designed to, again, provide hyper-local business development assistance to Chicago's small business community in clearly defined geographic areas listed by the applicant in their RFP response. Also, it's designed to support the development of general business acumen and assistance with, i.e., directly or via a referral partner, fundamental operational activities, including but not limited to applying for business licenses and public way use permits, developing a business plan, marketing assistance, contract assistance, and product, service, and workforce development. The place-based generalist contract. Also, it's designed to support early stage business owners with collecting business data to enable business owners to identify needs, then route and connect them to the relevant supports, such as the Chicago Business Center, the NBDC program grantee specialists, and or qualified non-NBDC BSO referral partners. Additionally, it's designed to provide support to economic development activities. The business stage specialist provides targeted supports for businesses at different stages of growth and expansion. Organizations should be skilled at identifying barriers to growth and utilizing the organization's networks and relationships to introduce clients to new markets. Supports are encouraged to have a mix of low-touch group workshops and high-touch one-on-one counseling to affect deep impact. Now, the priority stages of this business stage specialist are early and late startups, as well as growth and expansion. The capital specialist provides support, counseling, and coaching assistance to entrepreneurs and business owners requiring access to capital. Access to capital is consistently reported to be one of the biggest challenges of small businesses, especially startup businesses looking to scale, and business owners or businesses owned, I should say, by women and people of color with limited access to funding networks. The capital specialist is also expected to maintain relationships with institutions and programs that provide debt and non-debt, that being equity and grant capital. Organizations will provide relevant services to business owners who are ready to apply for small business loans, that being recommending options for financing, enhancing applicants' loan activities, assembling business loans, application documentations or documents. And for businesses that are not ready, provide mentorship, credit building, coaching, capacity building resources. Now, the primary demographic for this contract type or this specialist, capital specialist, is that of Black and Latinx entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs. The cultural specialists provide business support services for Chicago's small business community members who often face cultural and language barriers to accessing mainstream business services and support. Now, BACP recognizes the unique obstacles racial and ethnic minorities, as well as foreign-born business owners face, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. So the cultural specialists are expected to have extensive networks and act as cultural hubs for their respective communities. Organizations will provide culturally specific mentorship and assistance, as well as be a conduit for resources and opportunities to entrepreneurs and business owners in their communities. Now, the primary demographics for this cultural specialist category would be historically underserved areas, as identified by the Mayor's Invest Southwest initiative, including, but not limited to, community areas with high density of limited English proficiency populations, as identified in the latest US Census. The industry specialists offer sector-specific programming for businesses looking for expert guidance on how to start or scale their business and overcome hurdles that are unique to their industry. The NBDC program will prioritize 4 key industries based on current market size, business growth potential, high workforce participation and business ownership by people of color, employment potential, that being job creation, high earnings, and low barriers to our entry, period. The industry specialists, priority industries. There's the art and entertainment and media production, which is designed to support, or the support could include branding and marketing, integration into broader tourism and hospitality industry, workforce development and mentorship, business development and financials, cultivation of a community of small business owners, construction, building trades and engineering design. Support could include business attraction, managing credit and capital, contracting bids, workforce development trainings on bidding and estimation, food and beverage, manufacturing and retail. Support could include business model guidance, e.g., that being food carts, catering, shared kitchens, cafe/restaurant, etc. Counseling on business regulation, compliance for building, fire codes and permits, and mandatory licenses, certifications, workforce development focused on soft skills, and mentorship programs. Transportation and logistics. Support could include training on credit management for business financials, acquiring contracts, workforce development, support the pilot or expansion of new business models, micro businesses and businesses in new economies. Now, BACP, we recognize that this is particularly interested in supporting new and existing worker cooperatives, businesses owned and controlled by its employees. Worker cooperatives often offer many benefits, including the ability for workers to acquire short and long-term wealth through higher wages, annual dividends, and co-ownership in a business asset, as well as participate in management decisions. Supports would include coordinating education and training resources and providing technical, legal, and financial assistance for cooperatives. Innovation specialists can also create or develop neighborhood-based shared work environments for micro, small businesses, and new economy entrepreneurs through an incubator, accelerator, and or co-working facility. The primary models for the innovation specialists are worker cooperatives, incubators / accelerators, and new economies. The peer-to-peer trainer. Now, this is designed to work directly with other NBDC grantees to build the capacity of the organization and strengthen the collective capacity of the NBDC grantee ecosystem. Trainers will identify and share best practices, provide training, professional development, and technical assistance, and create a platform for connection and collaboration. The primary topics are business / economic development, business / internet technology and platforms, business service organization operations, and the NBDC program administrative support. Now, a little bit about the program requirements, starting with the work plan. Now, this is or must reflect how you implement the activities and achieve the measurable outcomes and fulfill the targets in your approved grantee work plan. The outcomes and metrics for program compliance and to measure efficacy of the program, all NBDC grantees will be required to submit documentation and Excel-based reports to validate completion of program activities.
I was gonna map.
To complete all program activities and plans towards achieving approved outcomes via the ECM reporting system. Now, deliverables must be submitted on a monthly basis, regardless of when you voucher. And speaking of vouchers, this is for fiscal compliance. All NBDC grantees will be required to submit vouchers / invoices via the iSupplier system in individual months format and not combined into multiple months. Participate in all city and BACP sponsored audits, site visits, evaluation, and quality assurance activities. A little bit about the scoring criteria. Now, proposals will be scored on the basis of the following, with 100 points being the maximum score. The monitoring section of the RFP has a maximum score of 15 points. The program summary has a maximum score of 30 points. The work program, 10 points is the maximum. The budget information portion has a 15-point maximum. The organizational capacity, 20 points. And the overall responsiveness, 10 points, totaling a 100-point maximum score potential. The selection criteria. The review panel will evaluate and rate all proposals based on the following evaluation criteria. The applicant must demonstrate they have the following key existing capacities for the NBDC program selection of this RFP. Ability to provide assistance to entrepreneurs, business owners, and/or NBDCs per the NBDC program category requirements. Experience or verifiable ability in performing contractual obligations to execute on expected commitments of NBDCs. Filling a noted program gap and why or how the NBDC funding is required to achieve goals. The applicant must identify any 2021/2022 NBDCs currently servicing the proposed geographic area and describe how their services are distinctive from the services provided by aforementioned grantees. Applicant demonstrates how they will be successful in performing activities listed in this RFP. The number of years the agency is financially solvent as evidenced by the IRS Form 990. Ability to cover the costs of the program while reimbursable grant funds are being processed. The overall quality and completeness of the application. Not responding to any question in the application, e.e., stating the agency is not a city grantee, etc., and any required documents will be considered an incomplete application and may disqualify the application. The timeline, the contract term, and how to apply. Now, the timeline for the RFP is due by the 30th of November, 12 noon Central Standard Time. The decision notifications will be provided or determined by mid-December. The contract term, it will be a 2-year cycle, and the contracts are annual with a 1-year option to renew based on compliance and performance. Now, how to apply. To complete an application for this RFP, respondents will need to set up an account in the e-procurement/iSupplier system. If applying for more than one category, respondents must submit separate responses for each respective category. Only one response/application may be submitted per iSupplier user ID. That concludes this pre-submittal conference presentation. At this point, we would love to field any questions that you may have, and we will answer them for you.
Hi there, this is Jessica from Northeastern.
Hi, Jessica.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. If we are thinking about submitting with in a partnership form, and we perhaps feel more comfortable submitting in different categories, how would that work? Or feel like our primary services are in one of the areas, and they're in one of the areas. Do we still submit one application, just identify that?
Well, if you feel that the services that you would provide in various areas would better align to the various contract types that I've mentioned, vis-a-vis place-based generalists, cultural specialists, or peer-to-peer, you would apply for each one of those contract types with a separate user ID number. If that answers your question.
So Paul, you're saying that we would need a different iSupplier ID and password for each different category, or one category we can use one iSupplier ID and password and do, for example, let's say at the ESDC, we have 3 contracts. So we have to have 3 different iSupplier IDs and passwords.
Would there be the same person applying?
Yeah, yes.
Or they would need a separate ID, user ID number or user
Okay.
ID.
Okay, all right, thank you. So we would need, so for example, we have a place-based, we have an industry, and we have a cultural. We need an iSupplier ID and an iSupplier password for each of those, correct?
Right. Let me go
Okay.
back to this slide where in the last bullet under how to apply.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Only one response / application may be submitted per iSupplier user ID.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Paul, if
Yes.
I may.
Oh, yes, Edwin Hyder.
Ed Timlos here. Hello, everybody.
Edwin.
So as a reminder, you may apply to any or all of the various NBDC category types that you qualify for. And as Paul has just denoted, and I see on some of the questions on the chat, that you can respond, but you must respond to a single category per response. And each response or application must be submitted with a separate user ID. So therefore, the admin account can create multiple user IDs via iSupplier. Simply add another individual or a user profile to be able to do so. So for those who have been with the program for a while, this is slightly different in the sense that you used to apply to 7 or several different categories on separate RFPs. We have combined them into one. And now you simply just need to reply to this one RFP to the multiple categories that you qualify for. And as a reminder that you should, if you are going to reply to multiple categories, assuming that we approve you one for the other, that you should exhibit capacity to be able to support the multiple programs that you wish to be accepted in, and know that the reporting requirements will be separate for each category and each contract. And we fully expect that different clientele would be reported in terms of the activities with the consultations for said contracts, so that there isn't what we term as double dipping or triple dipping if you have multiple contracts. Understandably, if you have multiple contracts and you are servicing a client with different services, then you should be able to denote that in your reporting, and that would be acceptable. What would not be acceptable is the fact that you simply utilize the same client over and over again, and that will be red flag and would be cause for an issue with the contract. Hopefully that answers several of the questions with respect to the application to multiple contracts and the requirements of such.
This is Sharon. I have a quick question. So when we go into the system and we fill out the application, when we're selecting categories, we're not duplicating information from the main application just for that particular category. That's what I want to clarify.
You will need, so when you're responding, you need to ensure that your response is in direct relation to the specific requirements of the category. However, there are multiple questions that unfortunately you'll have to provide, which would be similar to your previous responses with respect to your organizational information. However, when you talk about the response for your program summary, you need to name it accordingly per the program category type name, and then respond accordingly to the summary of your proposal that is in response to the requirements noted in the RFP for that specific category.
I got you. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Great question.
Edwin, this is Bonnie.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, just to follow up on I think that's where we confused. We understand the different responses, and I'm just trying to see if this has changed from previous year. We understand different responses for different categories, but there's some that are similar that could, like, whatever, let's say, history of the organization, that would be similar in two separate contracts. But so would that negate you having to do it twice, or you're still one contract, fill it out the same way, and if you cut and paste for the second one, then you do that?
You would, yes, you would cut and paste your organizational information that isn't pertinent to the specific contract type you're applying for. So it should, if your organizational information should be exactly the same. However, your response to the program summary would be unique. Now, if it is the same across the board, then obviously you'll be disqualified. We've had that in the past, unfortunately.
So in other words, be extremely careful about any cutting and pasting. Thank you, Edwin, for that detailed explanation.
Actually, sorry, could you just repeat what you just said about what to be very careful about?
Cutting and pasting. You got to make sure that you're answering specifically the nature of the question for that aligns to the specific contract type that you're applying for. So if you're applying for multiple contracts and you've responded to a particular question that falls under one type of contract, you don't necessarily want to cut and paste that into a similar response for another contract type, because the question may be extremely different, and the question would align to the uniqueness of that contract type. So you want to make sure that you're answering the specific question and addressing the uniqueness of that contract type.
Okay, thank you so much.
And if I may, regarding the questions, if you haven't seen them yet, some of the questions have multiple components, and we expect answers for the multiple components of the question. So if you wish to receive the full score, potential score for a section, then you must answer all components of the questions. We unfortunately noticed on past responses that sometimes parts of the question are answered and the other parts remain unanswered, and therefore our scoring mechanism then cannot provide a full score for that, and you only get a partial response score.
Thank you, Edwin, for the detail.
May I clarify my question from earlier? This is Jessica from NEIU. If we're anticipating working with an additional organization and they provide services ABC and meet that part of the contract, and my organization meets DEF as part of the contract, are we submitting separately, or do they serve it? Do one of us serve as the lead, and then we just explain in narrative form what each organization is contributing to the project?
That's correct, Jessica. You would, if you decide to form a partnership of sorts, we don't have a designated grantee and sub-grantee relationship for this contract, but there needs to be a lead. We don't normally see partnerships within this program. However, we don't dissuade it. And if you could show us in your response how that relationship would work, and with the corresponding budget details and how the compensation would be performed, as well as obviously in the work plan, how that is going to be performed in terms of the specific activities and the relationship as such. And so how do you ensure that the services as the primary, and I wouldn't say primary, but as the grantee, we would then need to ensure that the services that you say that your partners are performing are done accordingly. And then, and I hate to delve that much deeper, but we'll also need to have proof, evidence of said activities, and so that poses a challenge to the structure that you're proposing. But again, we're open, and we'd love to see a proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Other question? Any additional questions?
You have some questions in the chat.
Yep, looking at the chat, let's see. So we questions about submitting multiple responses, because they currently have 2 contracts. So I think we've resolved that. Multiple categories. So there's a question from Jen. Many chambers had their place-based generalist grant funding cut drastically 2 years ago. Can you let us know if there is a cap for certain chambers in certain areas for place-based generalist funding, or how funding decisions will be made for this category? You're taking into consideration service area size and number of businesses in the service area too. Good question. We did have a right sizing of our grant funding so that depending on the category type, we have a consistent minimum basis for the grant funding. And you'll note that if you look at the RFP supplemental document, and it was shared by Paul in the slide with respect to the statistics and the breakdown of the average grant funding, the range of funding. So you'll know what the base levels are for each category types. And then with respect to the ask for grant funding, in a sense, we do take into consideration the service area size, as well as the density of businesses within your proposed service area, and how, in terms of your proposal, will be servicing said density and the corresponding work planned outputs that you are proposing will factor into that as well. So those are the various facets of the program that comes into play in terms of the grant funding. But yeah, the typical grant funding will follow the range that has been published.
From
Another
Catherine George.
Go ahead, Paul, sorry.
The question from Catherine George: are there any contracts you feel are underrepresented or you would like to see more of, i.e. more cultural specialist contracts or industrial specialists?
Good question. Sure, we'd love to see more cultural, more specialists in general. Our contracts are predominantly general, place-based generalists. And so we'd love to see more specialists, as well as those who are qualified peer-to-peer trainers. So we'd love to see those proposals. With the cultural specialists, though, we need to make sure and ensure that those who are responding and proposing to service a target population, that you please denote how you will be servicing and the special services that you'll be providing, in a sense, to those target populations, and what makes your program unique in targeting that population. With the specialists, again, respond accordingly per what we are looking for, as denoted in the RFP. Noah had asked, are there funding request caps for each category? There isn't a cap per se, but we do have a limited funding amount in terms of for the entire grant program. And our goal is to make sure that our hope is to blanket the entire city, really, in terms of service area providers. And so at the end of the day, we want to ensure that all of our neighborhoods or communities have the appropriate servicing that they deserve. And so we want to make sure that we have enough grant funding to be able to share out with the rest of the entire city. We want to blanket the city at the end of the day.
Thank you, Edwin, for the response.
Quick question. Sorry, everyone. It's a little hard to hear where I'm at, and you probably already answered this a little bit, but I just want to make sure I understand this. So if I submit, can I submit responses for, say, 4 specialists on one RFP as long as I outline with a heading, cultural specialist, here's the narrative? No?
Manny,
Yes,
you have
sir.
to submit 4 separate ones.
Got it. So 4 separate total RFPs under one different ID for each one.
Correct. Different
Gotcha.
ID for each response.
Appreciate
So-
you. Thank you.
So if you're theoretically going to be responding to all 7 categories, you have to submit with 7 different separate IDs. There's 7 different applications. As a reminder, if you're using only one user ID and you put one after the other, it will blow away the last one and only keep the current one. So we unfortunately had those unfortunate circumstances. The last RFP where some of our respondents did just that. And so they thought they had multiple responses. They only had one, and it blew away everything else. So we are harping on it now. And I apologize for those who've heard this multiple times in the past, but we're harping on it because we don't want to hear the unfortunate stories of the responses not being taken. And with that said too, please note that the deadline is hard and fast, and we have no control over the system. It will automatically shut off at noon on November 30th. And we cannot accept any applications after that. No emails, no paper copies. And unless there was a system-wide issue that everybody had a problem with, there are no exceptions. So please make sure that you put in your application in a timely manner. You can actually start the draft now and continue to work on it. And you can continue to edit it until the system shuts down. But make sure you obviously submit it prior to that and give yourself ample time for any potential issues that you may face. And if you have any issues with the system, we don't manage the system. Please contact the iSupplier support line.
One quick question again, Edwin, I'm sorry. So if we still, if we have I have a new staff member that I'd like an ID number, we can still go ahead and order that?
Yeah, as you have an admin account, go in and add a contact. And then you check off a box that says, make them into a system user that has rights to submit an application. So it is your responsibility to add users. And if for those who are not familiar with how that process works, there's instructions on the iSupplier tab for instructions. And if you'd like for somebody to walk you through it, please call the helpline.
I don't see any new questions in the chat. Does anyone else have any question? No? Okay. All right, one and all, thank you so very much for joining us.
Paul, could you clarify something? I'm pretty sure you know the answer, just for everybody else. So if you have 2 different iSuppliers, like let's say a team has 2 staff members, each one has their iSupplier ID. If you start one of the RFPs in using one iSupplier ID, the other person can log into his iSupplier to finish that contract. They have to log in using the other staff members' iSupplier user ID. Is that correct?
I would double check that, Rudy, with the system. I believe you may have the ability to edit each other's if you give them the rights to be able to do that. But then whoever submits it, then and I believe that's the submitter of record. And so therefore you can't use that ID anymore if you want to submit another response.
Got it.
But please check with iSupplier support to ensure that that's accurate.
Okay.
Any additional questions before we give you back your time?
Sharon did ask, will we be mailing out the presentation slides? We'll be actually posting it on the NBDC page. So just go to chicago.gov/NBDC. And it will be in the section where we talk about the RFP. We'll be posting this shortly.
Any
Great.
additional questions? No? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can't thank you enough for taking the time out to join us for this Pre-Submittal conference. I hope you found it enlightening, and we certainly thank you for your questions, and we hope the responses address your respective questions. At that, or with that, I will say have a wonderful evening and a great tomorrow, and thank you again for joining. Good afternoon,
Paul.
everyone.
Thanks, Paul.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Edwin, quick question. Just quick question. Was there anything changed? It didn't seem like there was anything changed from previous years.
No, we just added some specificity and we kind of cleaned up the RFP.
Okay, all right, that's all I needed to know.
Okay.
Have a good one, folks.
Thank you.
All right, folks, good night.